Hey everybody, it's Kitty. I am going to be doing another Fairy Circle video today, so welcome to the Fairy Circle if you're new. If you're not new, welcome back. So, today I was planning on talking about shape-shifting fairies, but I think I might go in a little bit more of a different direction at first and then kind of ease my way into that one. I wanted to talk specifically about the bare basics of working with fairies. The reason I bring up this topic is because I just kind of want to clarify and clear up maybe any kind of confusion that someone might have coming to my channel, specifically with the Fairy Circle series. And that is that I am not Wiccan. I do not plan on doing any kind of circle castings to show you guys how to call fairies to your circle. I don't work as a Wiccan, so I don't do any kind of circle castings, and I also don't very often do spells, so that is not a way in which I work with the fairy realm. That being said, the way that I work and my beliefs of the fairies and the fairy realm really are based mainly off of what my ancestors believed and the legends and folklore that come from my ancestors and my people, and as well as my personal experience and just many years of research. My workings, my contact with the fairies have nothing to do with Wicca, and that's okay. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. That's just not what you're going to find in this series. So if you're looking for circle castings and calling quarters and things of that nature, you're not going to find it here. Sorry. Okay, so that being said, this is going to be kind of a video on the beginner's guide to working with fairies. How do you start working with fairies? I would say that the first place to start is to study. I mean, that's with almost anything that you're learning. You know, you can kind of read about it, you get an idea of the topic at hand, in this case it would be fairies, and kind of determine, you know, what your ancestors believed. For instance, if your ancestors are from Ireland, then you're going to find a lot of folklore and legends to go along with that you can read. W.B. Yeats is a wonderful author. Tip number one for beginning to work with fairies is to learn as much as you can about them, about the legends and folklore that specifically come from your ancestors, because that's probably going to be how you're going to connect best, okay? Some of the books that you could be looking into reading, I have included in one of my last Fairy Circle series videos, so please go and check that out. It's right on my front page under Fairies, and it should just be called Books and References on Fairies. So those are some places to get you started, okay? So once you've kind of got an idea as to what types of fairies you want to work with, remember there are good and bad, then you can kind of determine how you plan on attracting them, and then also to form sort of that working relationship with them. For instance, if you decide that you would like to try to attract some type of garden fairy, be it pixies, flora, fauna type fairies, any of those types of fairies, then you're going to want to build a fairy garden of some kind. Now, this doesn't have to be like a separate garden from the one that you already have. It just means that you would incorporate different elements into the garden that you have now. For instance, you could buy very cheap birdhouses from Michael's or a craft store, paint them in pretty bright colors, decorate them with beads, crystals, that type of thing, and put them out in your garden where you specifically have herbs, fruits, or flowers. Those are usually the three types of plants that garden fairies tend to gravitate towards. So that's one way to get started. That's a very simple way to get your relationship kind of brewing with the fairies, okay? Another thing, there are certain things that fairies do not like and do not appreciate. Some of those things include really loud, obnoxious noises. So, for instance, if you're out in your garden and you're trying to make it a quiet place for the fairies, it might not be a good idea to have your loud, barking pit bull around, for instance, while you're creating that sacred space for the fairies. If that makes sense, okay? So, loud, obnoxious barking dogs, loud, obnoxious kids that would trample over the stuff or move it for any reason. Probably not the best idea. So you want to start your relationship with them in sacred time, I guess you could say. You want to make sure it's a peaceful setting. You want to make sure that you are still and calm of mind when you are beginning your relationship with them, because they will usually only come to the people who are able to connect with nature and have that inner peace. Okay, so just something to keep in mind. Maybe before starting your relationship with them, as far as initiating a fairy garden, before you go out there and start setting up your garden to include these things, you might want to do kind of a cleansing of yourself, maybe align your chakras or realign, rebalance your chakras, and just make sure you're ready for it, okay? So really, once you have kind of attracted them, and it really does not take much. People think it's really hard, you know, that they only like certain people, but that's not necessarily true. If you're pure of mind and pure of intent in developing a relationship with them, they will definitely come to you. Again, you need to make sure what kind of fairies you're attracting, because like I said, there are good and bad. It's a beautiful day outside. Anyway. If you plan on working with the more capricious or mischievous type of fairies, and sometimes pixies and garden fairies can actually be pretty mischievous, you might also want to shield yourself before inviting them to your garden or to your home, what have you. Let's see, fairy basics. Offerings, libations, things of that nature. When you're trying to attract them, like I've said in videos before, you want to leave them little treats, little gifts, presents. Never thank them if you know that they have been around and they've done something for you. You don't really want to outright thank them. For some reason, they say that my ancestors would say that the fairies didn't like that. They don't want your thanks, and their rules are a little bit different than humans. They don't really function by human standards or human rules. So don't really expect them to function like humans, to have a relationship with you like another human being would, obviously, because they're not humans. So, once you've sort of attracted them, invited them to your garden or your home, then you sort of start to build a relationship with them. You kind of get to know what their demeanor is like, what their personality is like, and from there, I mean, you can talk to them. It's as easy as that. You don't have to cast a circle and invite them to come into your circle and all of that. I don't do that. I've never done that, and they come around me, so I don't think there's rules as far as what religion you are in order to attract them. By any means. I mean, our ancestors were from all over the world, had different religions, and each single culture on the planet has pretty much had some type of fairy or wee folk or little person that they would communicate with at some point to some degree. So, you know, you don't have to be Wiccan. You don't have to be a particular religion. From there, you can start to actually, if you're a dreamer particularly, and this is how I did it, was that I invite them to come into my dreams. Or when I'm traveling on the astral level, on the astral plane, I try to meet them. I try to find them on that plane. They're usually easiest to find there in their actual physical form. I think they just feel more comfortable coming to us on a spiritual level than they do taking an actual physical manifestation. That's not to say that they can't, because I believe that they can, and I do believe that they're different from nature spirits. A lot of people think that they're the same as devas or divas, however you want to pronounce them, and nature spirits and elementals. And while they are very similar, and elementals kind of branch over into fairies, nature spirits are not the same thing. Again, I'm going off of what my ancestors believed and practiced and knew, not off of what Wiccan books and things of that nature say today. Again, I'm not saying they're wrong. This is just what what I believe and what I have experienced. So that's why I'm sharing it with you guys. So I think that's going to be it for today. Oh, I did want to talk about the shape-shifting fairies. So when fairies do take physical manifestation, they can come in different forms. They could come to you in the form of a pixie or a flying fairy of some kind, which is sort of the modern day mainstream idea of what a fairy actually is. In reality, a lot of them are not tiny fluttering beings, but they can come across as that way to maybe appear less threatening or to kind of fly under the radar, no pun intended. So, but they also have the power to kind of shift into other forms that we wouldn't be able to see unless you knew otherwise. For instance, I believe that they shapeshift into specifically winged creatures, dragonflies, butterflies, birds of all different kinds, bumblebees, fireflies, ladybugs, beetles, praying mantis, all those types of bugs and winged creatures. I believe they do shapeshift into those forms. In fact, when I set up my fairy garden, I saw a huge increase in the dragonfly population. Now, my yard has always been a dragonfly haven. One particular point in the spring, I will see hundreds of them in my front yard in particular. It's like they breed out there or something. But I believe that my fairies take the form of dragonflies. It's just a comfortable form for them, and they can kind of sit on the fairy houses on the tops of them and hang out without anyone really knowing that it's them, except me, I guess. Butterflies is another big one. I also believe that they have the ability to manifest in the form of a human being or something similar. And they also will shift into other forms, animal forms, bears, wolves, horses. Then you have your water fairies, your different types of water elemental beings that are similar to fairies, but again, I don't believe the same. But they are also able to shift and take different forms, dolphins, whales, excuse me, seals, things of that nature. And all of the old legends and folklore will tell you about all of this. So if you, like I said, if you want to start out by studying and then kind of work into attracting and inviting them into your life, then that's the best way to start. From there, the relationship just kind of grows and grows and grows. As long as you're engaging, then they will also engage with you. Again, just be careful who you're inviting, what you're inviting, and where you're inviting them. And be sure to shield yourself before you do any kind of workings, specifically with circle casting or spells or anything of that nature. Okay, so there's your fairy basics and shape-shifting fairy lesson for the day. All right, blessings.